Hello again and welcome back. As mentioned this morning, I'm Sally Greenwood and the host of this next session, which hopefully will stimulate great conversation through the sharing of important and unique perspectives. I'll be joined by Dr. Sabrina Brum and Ms. Lorraine Graves for the next hour or so. We're going to be talking about risk communication in a global pandemic. A reminder that we are recording the session and eager to have you post your questions via the show Q&A to the right of your screen. A little bit about my guests. Sabrina Brum is a professor in the Faculty of Health Sciences at Simon Fraser University and the laboratory director at the British Columbia Centre for Excellence in HIV/AIDS. Before COVID-19, Dr. Brum's research combined molecular biology, epidemiology, and bioinformatics approaches to study HIV, genetic diversity, and evolution, with the ultimate goal of developing an HIV vaccine and a cure. She's still doing this, but over the last year, her lab, like many others in Canada and globally, also turned its attention to SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19. Lorraine Graves is a longtime and highly respected journalist, thrown in at the deep end in 1982 as a broadcast journalist specializing in science, tech, and medicine. Lorraine learned her craft while persuading reluctant researchers to share their stories, while also persuading news directors that the public is interested in more than political scandal. Today, with gratitude, she plies her craft at the Richmond Sentinel in the now well-established field of science journalism. Lorraine has recently been much in the news herself as a staunch advocate for COVID long haulers. Welcome to both of you, and thank you for sharing your time and expertise with us today.
My pleasure.
I think we can all agree that the pandemic demands strong communication between researchers, public health, and the public. Media has become an even more important conduit for communication over the past 14 months. Information exchange has demanded we build and fly the plane simultaneously. Our public health officials make today's decisions based upon the best evidence available. But when new information and improved data drive a change in course, the public becomes confused, or worse, calls the credibility of our leaders and system into question. But to be effective, our public health leaders must be bold and make decisions based upon the best information available, despite fearing the retrospective, as echoed by Dr. Mike Ryan of the WHO yesterday on our forum. And this leads to my first question, which is open to either of you to jump in first. Is there a perceived tension between peer-reviewed science and the real-time release of information imposed by a pandemic? Who wants to go first?
Well, I'd say in the public, I don't think there is a perceived conflict between those because they don't know what they are. The public is smart, they're intelligent, they know lots of stuff, but they know so much that is so different from the scientific community and the way it operates. And in a news story, I will have maybe 10 sentences to tell somebody what's going on, and 2 of those have to be clips from the expert. So I think what we have to do is find a way to communicate how this is going to affect you as a viewer, as a reader, as a consumer of social media, because these are seen as scientific minutia that they don't understand.
Sabrina?
Yeah, thanks for that. And thanks for this opening question. I hope you don't mind. I'm actually going to talk a little bit about the scientific process itself and how I think that COVID-19 has sort of brought this whole process into the public eye in a way that we haven't had the opportunity before. So I hope you don't mind. I'll tell you a little bit more about myself. In my position, I wear 2 hats. I direct a laboratory that provides a precision medicine service to people living with HIV. We do drug resistance testing. This is a test where we look to see if there is any resistance in the virus strain of that individual, and this information is then shared with the physician to help guide treatment choices. And this is very, very obvious. This type of work is immediately relevant clinically. But my other hat is that of a scientist. And the research that we do is of the basic foundational science type of activities where our goal is to simply contribute to knowledge that hopefully, eventually, will be useful for something, but it's usually not immediate. And in that way, most of the activities that I've been involved in the science side have been largely shielded from public attention, which is actually usually a good thing. So I'd like to take the opportunity to just describe how it usually works and all the parts of it that the public usually doesn't see. So we begin, I'll skip over all the rest of the part, but let's say we have some data. We are working with the data. We analyze it as best as possible. We're not sure. We consult with colleagues. We do this internally. It's this iterative process. And finally, maybe we're okay with sharing it with some colleagues. We take it to a conference. We get criticized. We go back. It's this iterative process where we are challenged. We challenge ourselves. We challenge each other. And finally, through all this, okay, now I think finally I'm ready to put this out there. We send it for peer review. And again, it starts again with the challenges. Well, we don't trust your methods, or why did you do it this way? Or have you considered this? And this is a very, very long, involved process that, doesn't make it into the public's attention because it doesn't need to. But the result of this is that, after that, we have possibly a scientific discovery that either incrementally increases what we know, or challenges what we know. But usually we don't have the opportunity to report most of this activities in the media. So perhaps what the public sees is that, science is this big cohesive thing that moves forward, with lockstep, but occasionally it's punctuated by a breakthrough, but other than that, we're all in agreement all the time and we're all working together. And COVID has kind of turned this on its head. So what we're doing now is we're trying to do the best science as quickly as possible in order so that there's some evidence that can form the basis of decisions. And so we are collecting information, and as rapidly as possible, we're sharing it with colleagues across the country, hoping that we'll get the opportunity to talk to one of the advisory boards nationally. We are telling our funders about the research that we've done. At the same time, we are preparing a press release and posting the research as is before peer review into the public domain with the goal of disseminating it as quickly as possible. So it's out there. And then what happens is this whole process of scientific critique, discourse, disagreement, taking a step back, moving forward. Well, my data is different than your data, and so on. This is all still happening. And is this the normal process? But it's happening in a way that's very, very public. I think there are great opportunities and advantages to this because the public have been alongside us in this journey as we learn, about COVID-19. But I do acknowledge there have been some challenges. So for example, it can be shocking to learn that there's disagreement sometimes. And there's this, there's a risk that some folks will think, well, look at these scientists. They don't even agree with one another. How can I possibly make a decision about myself when the experts are, not agreeing? And these concerns are legitimate, and I think it's really important to have opportunities to talk about them. So I hope I didn't go on for too long, but I'm really grateful.
So based upon that, and I think I also want to just point out that I think it's a really good thing that we have the scientific perspective represented here and a journalist perspective. So I do think that there's going to be some interesting tension throughout the course of this. And I think that's perfectly acceptable. And I hope the audience finds that interesting. But so am I to understand that you actually then feel as though there may be, that maybe the scientific process and the public health approach are at odds with the public's need to receive data in real time?
Lorraine, do you?
Well, I think it's yes. And I think the issue, I feel caught in the middle. I live with an immunologist who worked where Sabrina works now. Mm-hmm. I worked at Triumph. I know about the value of pure research. So my milieu straddles two worlds. I have one foot in the solid science, pure research, applied research, and on the other side, it's the shock I had to live with when I first joined a newsroom, where I remember popping my head up once and saying, did you know 3/4 of Canadians are never going to have cancer? And a very respected journalist popped his head up and said, that's not true. I just saw the statistic, 1 in 4 Canadians are going to get cancer. So that represents the general public much more, and they're not stupid, they're bright, but what they know is so different. So this gap is even bigger than most scientists realize, because most of your chums know what the scientific method is. They know all the vocabulary you use, all the principles. And I see it as even having to go steps before this as I straddle these two worlds. And it was such a shock to join a newsroom and try and get stories onto air that were of vital importance, but they weren't politics, they weren't labor stories, so who cared? And I had the same amount of time to tell people my story as, you know, the premier's screwed up again, or the premier's offered this again. So I think I admire the work that Sabrina and Sally are doing, because you really have to go the extra mile to help general reporters to get your story out there and to speak with emotion and passion and let people know what this is going to do for their lives personally.
So I'm going to do something a little bit different. I have some other questions and we're going to get to those, but there is a question here that I think is timely. The question is, how do we reconcile scientific research done in real time and other public health considerations and other factors, including politics, limitation of resources? So how do we reconcile all of these different things that are happening simultaneously?
Well, if you're speaking to journalists, you make it one single sentence with one verb in it that you get. It's called news, and that's all you get to do. So you have to boil it down to why this matters to you today and what's new, because it's news.
And I would add to that, say that so thank you for that question. And as a scientist, I would say that I have the luxury of my position being and role being relatively straightforward and simple. I'm here to generate data that will help us have information so that our colleagues in public health, as well as at the political, in the political institutions, they have the really tough job of taking the evidence and making the best decision that can be made based on the knowledge and resources that we currently have, so that we can have the best benefit to the largest number of Canadians. And maybe, if you don't mind, I'll share a sort of a recent event from my sort of scientific activities in COVID-19. As many of us recall, the COVID-19 vaccines were rolled out in last December, and the earliest vaccines were deployed in long-term care. So healthcare workers and residents of long-term care received the vaccines first. So there was the earliest opportunity in Canada to study vaccine immune responses in Canadians was in the context of elderly people living in long-term care. And I've been leading a team that has been trying to understand this. So we developed a cohort and we measured immune responses in elderly residents of long-term care, as well as healthcare workers, and we compared the magnitude of these responses. What we found was that, it's not surprising, the immune responses of very elderly people were not as robust, and then they were also not as functional as younger people. At the same time, so we had this result where it's like, well, the vaccines are working, they are stimulating immune responses, but the immune responses that we see in elderly people are not as strong. Right. We felt that this was an observation that was worth sharing, so we did. But as we all know, there are also very limited vaccine supplies in Canada, or there were at that time. And so our role as scientists was to prevent, so there's some workers outside my door, and I'm just going to close the
realities of life in the pandemic.
Yeah, I know they're delivering equipment. Actually, that is for COVID-19. But my job as a scientist was to communicate this information as rapidly as possible to the relevant people who would use it to make a decision. And so my interpretation was, we have these results. It looks like the vaccines are inducing immunity, but the responses are not as strong in people who are elderly. Our recommendation is that ideally, if vaccines were available to everyone, we recommend that if possible, the second doses for people who are very elderly and vulnerable, perhaps shouldn't be delayed so long, because it's possible that they remain vulnerable during this period. That is just my job as a scientist, but it's the tough job of the decision makers to take into consideration that evidence, along with absolutely all the other evidence from around the world, and the number of doses actually available to Canadians. And the tough decisions come when it's well, how do we maximize the benefit to the most people? And the answer to that is, to the best of our knowledge, it probably still makes sense to distribute the first doses as widely as possible to get as many people possible that have some immunity, acknowledging that that is not perfect. So I guess, I don't know if this answers the question, but the scientists have it easy. We're there to generate the evidence. The tough decisions that are challenged
public policy.
are at the higher level.
Whereas were I doing a story on your research results, I would say Granny's alive today because she got her shot. She lives in long-term care. She still caught COVID, but she didn't die. And you get a quote from her daughter saying, "We love her so much." And then I'd get you to give me a quote saying, elderly people don't get as big a response, and it doesn't protect them quite as much, but it does keep them alive. Mm-hmm. That's why they need to be on the hurried up list for getting their second shot. And we show a picture of the daughter hugging mom and say, vaccines make a difference, and we're out. And that's the news story. When I started in the newsroom, I'd come from a science background. It was a rude shock. And the sage of the newsroom sat me down, and Chester Grant, and he said, it's all about emotion. The facts only support emotion. And I came to understand that all of us make our big life decisions based on emotion. Think about how you feel about capital punishment or abortion. That's an emotional decision. And we'll argue facts, but that's not what's going to change my mind. And so everything in news is that you lead with the emotion. It's not the scientific process. It's as divorced as possible, but they're not mutually exclusive. You can achieve both goals.
Yeah, so, and that's a really great segue. So the job of providing accurate science communication to the public is large and crucial. The pandemic and the public's efforts to decipher a lot of information quickly has amplified and brought greater urgency. Typically, good communication adheres to a policy of keeping things very simple. And this would kind of speak to what I know Lorraine loves, is the KISS principle: keep it simple, stupid. But the pandemic and public health measures are anything but simple. It often can't be distilled into short sound bites or 150 characters. It can't be. So how do we, as scientists, communications people, journalists, make information accessible to the public with as much information as is necessary? And what are the best practices to doing that? And that's a really big question. So pick it apart and kind of speak to whatever moves you.
Tell me how, and my boss, Cameron Bell, always said, why is the farmer in Kamloops and the housewife in Burnaby even going to care and listen to this story? So question 1, make it interesting and relevant. Question 2, use analogies whenever possible. And as scientists, you need to be tolerant of what I'm doing and trust I'm giving the right impression. I might not be giving something that's dead accurate. So I may say, oh, it runs in families, instead of saying it's autosomally dominant and genetically determined. I have to explain in single syllables. People don't trust people who use long words. because it shows you've been thinking about what you say. Whereas when you say, I love it, I hate it, this does that. So again, I have to find an analogy. I have to lead with the emotion. And if you feed that to me, it's so safe, my baby's getting her vaccination this afternoon. And if I get a shot of you loving your baby and holding him or her and them getting their shot, that's going to blow away so much other conflicting information. That's what will persuade people it's safe, because we care about you as a researcher, as a human being, and you obviously care about your baby.
And Lorraine, I hope you don't mind if I use this kind of as a learning opportunity for myself as well. I find that it's challenging sometimes to simplify the message, and I think sometimes we fall into the trap, or I shouldn't use the word trap, but the challenge is sometimes that we are trying to simplify so much that we rely on dichotomizing the information. Is the answer yes, or is it no? And very often in science, like, well, it's mostly yes, but there's some information, there's some nuance here that I think is also important. But often it's like, well, is it yes or is it no? How would you? So, for example, the vaccines that we have for COVID-19 are safe, they are effective, but they're not absolutely 100% safe, and they're not 100% perspective. It's enough to say, yes, they are safe and effective, but how as a journalist, how would you counsel scientists to be able to strike this perfect balance between communicating nuance appropriately while also communicating the big picture? Do you have any?
Yeah, sure. Show 6 of your friends and say, if they get COVID, one of them's going to get a serious blood clot. And then take a cigarette, break it in half, and say the risk of a clot from the vaccine is like smoking half a cigarette in your lifetime. Use an analogy. It's as dangerous as getting hit by lightning on the golf course. And just like on the golf course, we know what to watch for. Lightning storms, thunderstorms, so do physicians. They know, and you're told what to watch for. And just like on the golf course, you know what to do. You get inside and stop carrying a metal stick on an open plane. They know what to do to make sure those clots don't cause problems. And I'd probably add, and that poor woman who died in Alberta actually knew what to watch for, and the doctors turned her away. So the problem wasn't the vaccine. The problem was where the patient and the hospital interface, where they came together.
It's fascinating because assessing risk, right, and understanding people's tolerance for risk is we could talk for hours on this. Mm-hmm. But if we were to use the AstraZeneca vaccine and the blood clotting risk as an example. And I will say that I have heard this vaccine described by somebody I have a lot of respect for as a star player with a terrible coach. There was, in my age demographic, I'm a 50-year-old woman. And so there was all of this hype, you shouldn't be getting this vaccine and all of this kind of stuff. And I turned to where I always go to for a lot of my information, and that was the BC CDC. And there was this really great infographic, right, that basically said your risk of blood clots in getting the AstraZeneca vaccine was 4 out of 1 million. If you took birth control, it was 500 to 1,200 out of 1 million. If you smoke, it's 1,763 out of 1 million. And if you get COVID, it goes all the way up to 165,000 per million. And for me, that works. I was like, okay, this is brilliant, right? Puts it in perspective. I understand it. It's context. But we just had a panel prior to this one with a bunch of social media influencers who are please don't misunderstand. These are people who are very, very savvy and have knowledge. And they pointed out, and I agree with them too, that these kind of statistics, they don't work for everyone, because in some ways they're received as being dismissive. We're not being empathetic to where a person's coming from when we're asking this question. So it isn't to kind of quote Sabrina, it's not black and white here either. It's very murky, right? So I I like that kind of communication. I like black and white. I like someone who gives me the facts, trusts me enough to go away with those facts and formulate my own opinion. But I'm also somebody who digs around a bit and I ask questions. But not everybody has the opportunity or the bandwidth to be able to do that. So this whole idea of assessing risk, and my one question I have is, do you think that in some ways the public has lost the ability to assess risk through this pandemic? And I don't know if you have a feeling about that. I know that Fred has asked how to communicate to the public on making decisions given uncertainty and when individual priorities must be secondary to critical public health priorities. So these kinds of, they all morph together, right? So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I agree with you because I personally take comfort in information, and the data and the stats are what I go looking for from reputable sources. And living with a scientist, we can say, well, I'll say, is this a good paper? And he can say, no, crap. Look at the p values on that.
But papers are tough, right?
But John Carroll said, we are all made stupid by fear. Don't fight the stupidity, address the fear. And I belong to a Facebook group for long haulers, and people will go complaining about stuff and very upset, and then they'll draw a false conclusion. And the best way to start that is to say, this is really upsetting. So anybody who starts a conversation like that with me, I'm listening. Instead of saying, you stupid idiot, why the hell in God's green earth did you ever draw that conclusion? But the other really big thing when we're talking about it is you have to give concrete examples, and you have to show that you trust it, because it's all about trust in the media. It's all about, do I trust what you're saying? And statistics sound like you're hiding behind something. Whereas if you say the Pfizer vaccine, how safe is it? Well, here's another Pfizer product. It's this little triangular blue pill. No one asked about how safe it was and worried about whether they were allergic to the ingredients in it. And here's the information on it. And it's been very successful. Now, here's the information on the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. And you could do a compare and contrast, and bet your bottom dollar the vaccine's safety profile and serious adverse events profile is way milder than the little triangular blue pill. So comparisons in real life.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think this really clearly illustrates that different strategies work for different people. But that doesn't mean that with every strategy that we try, we shouldn't communicate it to the best of our ability. So what I heard from both of you, and I absolutely completely agree, risk information can only be, and this is true whether you're a scientist or a non-scientist, doesn't matter, you can only interpret risk in context of other risks. You have to compare risks to something else in order to make a decision. So I think it's absolutely essential that when risk is communicated, that it's communicated in context with other risks and delivered in a manner that is accessible. So I think we can all improve, I can improve as a scientist by making sure I adhere to those, general principles. But the other important issue is that even if you communicate the facts, or the numbers in a way that allows data-driven people to understand, there's this emotional component that is also there. And scientists like me, I appreciate the opportunity to be reminded that is as important or more important than the information. And then I guess that I'll use an example from the United States, I guess. There's some concern that vaccine uptake in some people will not be as high, and that this seems to be divided along political lines. So I was reading a story about how there had been focus groups among people who identify as Republican, just public health officials just trying to understand how can we deliver a message in a way that would be more effective. And one thing that apparently came out, and it it came, you said, there was many people in the focus group says, actually, it depends on who is telling us. Because some people we feel that we can inherently trust, other people's we cannot. And you know what? I was disappointed, but one of the people that were identified as not effectively being able to communicate to this particular segment of the population was Dr. Tony Fauci. I think that Dr. Fauci is he's my communication and science hero. But this just drove home as different communication styles work for different groups of people. And someone who I might find to be absolutely compelling might not be convincing to someone else. So I appreciate the opportunity to discuss this too, because you're absolutely correct that the way in which we convey the message and who conveys the message is also really important. And we need to pay attention to that part as well.
That's where influencers become so important in social media. And they talked about Goop, and someone who was pro-science, someone pro-science appeared on Goop, and the deal was it wouldn't be edited. And you have to look at the demographics now and see who are you reaching, who's your audience. Because if I'm talking to scientists, and I give talks to scientists on how and why to deal with the media, and the men always come up afterwards saying, it shouldn't be like that. And they are two divides. And look for influencers if you want to persuade people, persuade the influencers. Talking about how much it has to matter to me before I'll change what I do or change my mind. UK statistics that have just come out, and in less than a year, they've gone from 39% of the population being either reluctant or on the fence about vaccines and being totally opposed. So that's a whole group, both the reluctant and the opposed, going from 39% to 11% in well less than a year. So again, it's something that affects them. Diphtheria, off my radar, but COVID in England, everybody knows somebody who's been touched by it.
Yeah. Okay, we've got some great questions coming through, so I'm going to pull one from here. How can science communicators make it clear that the science wasn't wrong at the start of the pandemic or at any point in time, I suppose? We just didn't have all of the information we have now. So we can talk about masks, we can talk about all sorts of different things here. But what can we do as communicators to help people understand this whole kind of process where we're basing our decisions today based upon the very best information we have, and it might change?
I use analogies. The one I've come up with, and some of these analogies take a lot of thinking, and if you've got a better one, send it to me, is as parents, we work to do the best we can with the information we have and what we know. As our child grows, as we learn to do some things better. And it doesn't mean we were wrong. It's just we've learned more and we've learned a better way. So that's the best I can do. And we have to understand, in the public, they want to say yes or no. And they think theory means best guess. Theoretical in general parlance means not real. So if there's a theoretical correlation, that means it's just not in reality. So even the vocabulary is very different. So that's why people can say, oh, it's just a theory of evolution, because for them, it means that's just somebody's guess. So we have to really assess our language, and we have to find analogies.
I appreciate your analogy, Lorraine. And actually, I've been using the same one about the journey that a new parent takes. You have this baby is like, well, I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to be doing. And you try your best, you learn, you seek, but then your baby also grows. So you learn more, but then you adapt to the changing environment all the time and all of the information that comes in. And I think that analogy is something that many, I've used it as well. And I think it's an analogy that many people can relate to. But I think it's just important to use every opportunity we can to just take a step back and remind ourselves of the journey we've all been on as a global community for the last year. I mean, just over a year ago, this virus was unknown, completely unknown to humanity. And in the past year, we have embarked as this global community of scientists and non-scientists on this learning journey. And it hasn't been linear, and it hasn't been, we've taken steps back and steps forward, and we have learned as we have gone along, and we have adapted to the new knowledge. It hasn't been perfect, but I think it's really remarkable what we've been able to achieve together. But I do recognize there has been these examples of advice that has come from our public health leadership that has seemed contradictory, but in fact, it has been because of adjustments to new knowledge, to changing knowledge. For example, almost a year ago now, we never went into a lockdown here in BC, but we did have a period where the restrictions were more strict than they were now, and we were told, stay at home as much as possible, try to avoid even going outside, or, and I remember at the beginning of June last year, some of these restrictions lifted, and people were encouraged to go outside, wear a mask, go outside. People, well, Dr. Henry just told us for the last 2 months that we weren't allowed to go outside, but now we're supposed to go outside. This is confusing. Why do people keep changing their minds? But I think it's just important to say, well, just remind ourselves, have the perspective is that we're on this journey together. We are making the best decisions that we can based on the evidence that we have. As new evidence comes in that allows us to understand virus transmission better, allows us to quantify risk better, we are going to be able to adapt our recommendations that will balance the necessity to minimize transmission, but at the same time allow people to to live their best lives as possible with the fewest restrictions. So I appreciate that.
Well, yeah, and also during that time, many other things were changing. I mean, we were going from kind of winter to spring. I mean, there's just so many different variables that are happening in step with new information, countries that are ahead or behind, the sharing of that data. I mean, and that's another topic altogether, is just the incredible sharing of data that has happened during this pandemic. That's really not seen we haven't experienced it like that quickly in any other circumstance. So I think it is important for people to kind of try and remember that all of these different parts are moving at the same time, and people have to stand up in front of us every single day telling us what's happened today, what's today, and what do we think will happen tomorrow, which in and of itself is it's a very taxing undertaking. And there's a question from Alex here that says, should we communicate less or less often with a clearer message rather than every day, hour, so as not to create or add to the confusion? So that's an interesting question. What's your thought on that?
If it's interesting, I'm happy to read something short on Twitter every hour. If it's going to affect me, if it's short and snappy, and also personally, if it's cool science, or better yet, a good animation, a good graphic, or science art, I don't mind.
As we think about the pandemic, Lorraine, and we think about our public health, provincial health officer, and our Minister of Health, I mean, it's not every day now, but it was for a very long time. Is that the right way to do it? Or after 14, 16 months, we all know there's fatigue. Should we be switching that up? Are we confusing things by doing that? What's your feeling on that?
Personally, I'd like something short and snappy more often, one sentence or two that conveys to me how it's going to affect me. And then you can do the deluge of information on the periodic basis that the journalists are going to interpret. That's my personal perspective on it, is little bites more often.
But do you think that it adds to confusion, the way that it's being done?
The way it's being done, no, because we still rely on journalists to take that information. Not everybody's watching Dr. Henry's briefings. And so they take and distill it and tell us what we want to know. And sometimes they're live tweeting it. Most people now get their information from social media. And when Ronan Farrell did 3 separate articles about three very different people who, the attempted coup in the States on January 6th, to a person, none of them read regular media. They all got it mainly from Facebook, but from other social media, which have built into them recursive algorithms that keep feeding you more of what you like. And earlier today, we heard how to interrupt that and how to get your information inserted into those algorithms by engaging with people who don't just share your beliefs.
Yeah.
So it's a very important, we have to allow for much more social media and cater to the needs of social media much more if we want to nudge people, to persuade them that there's valid science, that there are good reasons, and we do that with emotion.
Okay. Sabrina.
I will, I guess I'll extend this question because the question kind of goes two ways, and I've heard both versions of the question. So the question is, should we be doing, would it be advantageous for us to give a little bit of less information? But I've also heard the opposite question. We need more information. It's like how at the same time we have some individuals that feel that we need more information and some that say maybe there's a little bit less. I think this might be, you probably disagree, but nothing is perfect. And I think that we've done a reasonably good job at providing the information that is available and making that available daily to the folks who are interested in knowing it. And personally, I've been appreciative of this. I don't see how it is possible to have provided more information than we have as a province. So for example, I know not everyone uses this, but I check the BCCDC's dashboard every day at 4:30. This is updated with lots of information, number of cases for today, the number of tests performed, the test turnaround time, the number of vaccines administered, the test positivity rate. There's 4 other metrics broken down by health authority. And I have relied on this to guide my understanding of, for example, my personal risk in my personal life. And I think, not everybody needs to see it, but I have found this enormously useful. And I would think it would be a detriment if that information was updated, for example, only weekly.
Mm-hmm.
The reason that I say that is because when an epidemic enters into a different growth phase, an exponential growth phase, for example, a week is an eternity. We need updates every day to be able to really assess where we are in the risk trajectory. Similarly, if we implement measures that are successful, the risk can begin to go down very quickly. And having information updated every day allows us as a community to understand this. So I also don't think it would have been possible or feasible for us to offer less information, only because we actually can't control all of the complex players and interactions needed in the information sphere. And if we would have taken steps to try to control or withhold or modulate somehow the amount of scientific information getting out there, I think a bigger risk would be that misinformation or disinformation might have a higher chance of, being circulated. I think
you're right, because
thirst for information, people are going to turn to wherever they can to get their information. And I think as a scientific community anyways, the best that we can do is try to put information out there that is of the best quality, that we are able to maintain in this environment, ever-changing environment, and making it available and accessible and trying to communicate it clearly.
I agree. And I also agree that if you don't give them information, they'll make it up. If you've ever watched a live event when there's been a sudden tragedy and they have to fill time, there's speculation like crazy. And it's because they have to fill time and they have to fill the void and they have to feed the beast, as one of my editors used to say about getting the stories out. But what will persuade people is Sabrina Brum posting, just saw the BCCDC stats today. I feel comfortable going out with my kids as long as we wear our masks. Or Sabrina Brum posting, Looks like a better day to stay indoors with my kids to stay safe because.
Yeah,
That's
which is a
gonna-
really interesting comment. And it's again, it leads into a question here. How do you both communicate concerns or guide people in your personal lives about misinformation? What's working for all of you in your real lives?
I have to listen. I have to start with listening, and I'm not very good at it, but I have to listen and hear what their fears are and find a way within what matters to them to comfort those fears. And it's not always successful, and it can take time. And I talked to a public health nurse who works with new moms at risk. And I asked her, what do you do with moms who are opposed to vaccines? And she says, I say nothing, I listen a lot, and I build trust. And once there's trust, then I can talk about my experience and what I've seen and how I feel about it. And the stats won't convince her, but how I feel about it will once she trusts me.
Yeah, good point. Sabrina, you must, being a scientist and really understanding everything, that all of the detail, do you get asked a lot of questions in your personal life to kind of help people make sense of things or for your opinion?
Yeah, I do, both from colleagues and from members of my own family, as well as people I don't know, people who I would meet through interactions. If I give a public lecture or something, I would get questions. I echo Lorraine's comments. The most important, like I have to admit, I've had gotten questions from people who are extremely skeptical about vaccines, not trusting the safety, and you just having major concerns. And I must admit, my first reaction that I keep internal when I hear somebody saying, well, I don't trust this, I'm not going to get this vaccine, I think there's stuff in it that, is unhealthy. What I'm feeling inside is this. I can't believe I'm hearing this, but I don't let it show.
Yeah.
Or I try not to let it show. And I think, why do you feel this way? Or like, what is leading you to, and I, like Lorraine, I try to explore, and I try not to be judgmental, because it doesn't help to it doesn't help to disagree. So I listen. I try to figure out where the person is coming from. I try not to be prescriptive and just say, no, you should get the vaccine because, everyone should, because that's not an effective way to convince. But slowly I try to, if they're receptive, I try to introduce a little bit of my scientific knowledge with the goal of, not convincing them right away, but hopefully seeding that little bit of curiosity that might allow them to then open their mind to the possibility of changing it. A lot of times it takes a number of conversations. But yeah, being non-judgmental and listening, and trying to communicate the science at opportune times where they might be receptive.
Exactly.
To listening to some of that.
Excellent. Yeah. Do you believe that science education, for example, scientific method processes, is sufficient to enable the general public to understand what is reported in the media?
Not so far. Nope. We need to concentrate much more on science concepts and far less on memorizing differential equations in our elementary and high school. Watching people struggle through pre-calculus and calculus in high school, knowing that in university, they're not going to need a lot of that. And what they do need, they'll learn at the time. We've got space in the curriculum to learn more science, the wonder of it, the excitement of it. I was taking first year calculus before I understand why the miracle of carry one when you're adding actually worked. I was waiting for the time it didn't. No one explained to me that science is trying to explain the grammar of reality so you can use it other places, or you can figure out what's going to happen next. No one communicated this to me, and the excitement and the fun of it. It was dull, it was boring, and my physics teacher in high school mocked the girls in the class.
Yeah.
So it was not an encouraging, we need enthusiastic, well-educated science teachers who teach more than just what's in the text and the little bit there. They need to be able to answer well, if this happens and that happens, what's that mean in this situation? And
critical thinking, yeah,
it needs to be far better taught. And there are some stunning science teachers out there.
There's some stunning science programs too. If I can put a plug in for Genome BC's Gene School, So there's my dirty little pitch. So
It's not a dirty
Sabrina,
little pitch, it's a public information service. It's great. Look it
Sabrina,
up.
what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think we're not there yet, but in my career so far as a scientist, I've seen major signals for improvement in this area, and I've seen major changes. Like when I first started, um, most of the basic scientists I was interacting with, who were mentors older than me, the general feeling was that a need to be able to communicate your science to a lay audience was not particularly important, wasn't really a skill that, right? If you're a basic scientist, you need to be able to communicate your data to other scientists, because that's your knowledge, that's who's going to build on. There's no need for you to be able to make your science accessible or interesting to the public, because it's not like we're making breakthroughs every day. This is completely changed. Right?
Agreed.
Over the course of so at the beginning, those of us who were a little bit more interested in science communication took opportunities to kind of hone those skills ourselves. But now there is a realization that not only is it, useful, but it's essential. And in fact, part of our responsibility as scientists is to communicate our results to a broader audience that consists of people other than scientists. And there are programs and supports now available to help us learn how to do this quickly, because folks like me, fumbled through, and Lorraine, I'm sure you can appreciate, sometimes I'm sure when you have had interviews with scientists, it must have been infuriating because they go on and on and on.
I've offered to give my husband a wallet card that says, "I'm human being, but under no circumstances try to interview this scientist."
And knowledge translation is fundamental, right? If you can have the greatest breakthrough ever, but if you can't articulate it and make it relevant to people, it's not going anywhere.
Listeners' work on washing their hands didn't go anywhere until he could convince doctors to wash their hands between patients. And the physician who before him, years before, had come up with this, no one listened. He felt like Cassandra, cursed to always tell the truth and never be believed. But the level of science knowledge in the general public isn't high. They know lots of other valuable things. But when I started as a journalist, the largest adult group in BC were those who had not finished high school. And the next largest adult group were those who had only finished high school. And BC has addressed that by changing the qualifications to graduate. So now you only need one grade 11 science class to get a full Dogwood high school graduation.
Yeah. Has the pandemic changed the way you communicate your message, either as a journalist or a scientist?
It's added a great deal of urgency to it. And I have to pull back and go, no, don't use stats, use stories. And I remember Sally saying, stories are powerful. They really are. Use the emotion. I trust this because I'm going to do this because. And it's much more urgent to get accurate information out, to dispel the fears that fuel the inaccurate information, and to try and create an environment for my colleagues in the media who are doing 2 and 3 stories a day. And they're doing COVID this morning, they're doing a bridge opening this afternoon, and tonight it's the inquiry into money laundering. And then tomorrow they repeat the cycle. We don't have time for the most part to research. We can't go back to original sources. We have to have people we trust. So it's changed things. It's brought to light. We no longer can afford specialists in most news organizations. And that's a big loss. So yeah, it's changed things. It's made it more urgent because it directly affects people's lives.
Sabrina, anything to add?
Yeah, I agree that the main change is the urgency with which information needs to be communicated and the number of stakeholders to which it needs to be communicated to more quickly than ever. So it's not like the strategies have changed, but the amount of time devoted the bandwidth devoted to communication and clear communication and communications to various stakeholders, from members of the public all the way to our colleagues in public health. We're communicating the same information as quickly as possible in the most effective ways we can to large groups of people, different groups of people, and that has made it challenging because we're doing that on top of actually generating the data. So it's all the usual scientific activities, but on top of that, an increased importance of clear communication to a large base.
So there's a question here from Spencer, who I believe is a scientist himself. Do you think as scientists, we just really aren't reaching that wide of an audience? I.e., are we stuck in a world of print as opposed to multimedia formats? Sabrina?
Sorry.
I'm going to let Sabrina go first.
Sure.
Well, I think this is changing as well. And I think that COVID, I think it was changing anyways, but I think COVID has helped accelerate this further. So a decade ago, I would say, yeah, we're all us scientists, we have our, we need to publish our paper in a with a peer-reviewed journal. But now there are so many different ways that scientists are using to communicate their science. We have scientists that are communicating their science via blogs, via Twitter, preprints. I mean, preprints have been around for a long time. But I have to admit that as a scientist, I wasn't fully aware of the potential for impacts of preprints until COVID. I didn't post my first preprint. My first preprint was actually a COVID research preprint. And I think it's because of the urgency of getting information out that we have been forced to explore different ways of getting our science out. And we're kind of muddling our way through that. But I think to answer your question, it is changing. And I think it is changing for the better. As we explore different ways to get the message out there, I think we'll be able to achieve a larger level of engagement with a broader range of stakeholders other than, the traditional way of communicating your results to other scientists and keeping it that way.
Okay.
Well, I see preprints have really come into their own because, as Sally said, we've been designing the airplane as we're taking off. And therapeutic decisions were based or influenced by preprints in the early days because we just didn't know.
I would say they still are.
Perhaps, yes.
A year later, we're all following that, yeah.
I still see, and that's a whole other debate about the need for peer review, which is important, but how long that process can take and people that go through and change amongst in a paper drive me crazy. But I think the vast majority of communication is still scientist to scientist, and that's not wrong, but you also have to have this bifurcation where you go off to talk to the public directly through social media, or you talk to journalists that you trust. And I agree, we're seeing the need for science communication more and more because good science communication saves lives. It fuels good research. It can fuel peer support for peer research. And but the appetite for science is for small bites in the public. We want nibbles. Blogs are great, but they tend to be read by your audience. Videos are wonderful, but if it's over a minute to a minute 30, it's not going to be watched on Facebook. If it's over 30 seconds, it's not going to be watched on Twitter. So you can get your message out in that short a period of time, but it's a specialized skill of honing it down to the message that has impact.
Great, thank you. Behavioral psychology shows that education doesn't change behavior, but emotions do. And I think you've both kind of spoken to this. How can we communicate information in an emotionally optimal tone? So we've talked about, making sure it's relevant, making sure that people are at the heart of it. But when we talk about emotionally optimal, what do you think about that? What is emotionally optimal?
My 2-year-old's alive today because I'm afraid to go do this because, make it personal. As a scientist, you're taught to use passive voice, take the person out of it. Media is just the opposite. It's all about people and emotion. Put yourself forward, show your enthusiasm. But again, you only are going to get to communicate one sentence in a story, and it gets one verb. Make sure it's a good one and use short words.
Sabrina, anything to add?
I agree with Lorraine, and in tailoring your message to make sure it's relatable to the audience, knowing that, so analogies are great, but knowing that even analogies will sometimes need to be tailored to your specific audience, because the way in which you might communicate a message to, for example, a room full of high school students might in some cases, not all cases, be slightly different than a room of their parents, for example. Not always, but sometimes. So being able to relate to the audience with analogies that work for them is also really important.
When in doubt, use babies or food, because it's something most people know.
Very good. I'm going to switch it up here. The first thing I do want to let you know is that there's a shout out to you, Lorraine, from a science teacher, ex-science teacher, who just said, yes, yes, Lorraine Graves. So I wanted to give you props for your comments earlier. But it's actually a question that's directed to Sabrina. It's interesting. What lessons have you learned from HIV research that can be applied to COVID, the COVID virus? So it's not really in this topic area, but it's somebody who has an interest. So let's go there.
Yeah. I guess I can answer this question really, really, really personally, but then I think I'm actually going to use this opportunity to answer this question in a completely other way. So science is all about leveraging what you know and techniques that you have and strategies that you can use to learn more information, and repurposing those in new ways to try to extend your knowledge of something else. So it's all about, okay, I know a little bit about this. These are the techniques that I use to study this. And in this case, this is, I study HIV. HIV is an RNA virus. There's some similarities between some RNA viruses, but to a large extent, the techniques, the techniques that I've used over my career to study HIV have been translatable in some cases quite easily to SARS-CoV-2. So an example, I'll just use one example of one of the early studies where we transitioned. Folks might remember about a year ago when COVID-19 diagnostic testing first began to be done in British Columbia. There was a lot of concern in the news about false negative tests, and there was concern about, are these tests accurate? And the thing that was most worrisome to people was like, what if these tests are giving us a false negative result? Meaning, what if somebody truly has COVID, but then gets the test done and the test comes back negative, right? They have COVID, but they've been told that they don't. So it's really important for us to understand whether we have a problem with false negatives, and if so, why they're happening. And that's an example of how we were able to quickly transition a bunch of stuff that we were doing in HIV and pretty much apply it directly to COVID-19. And the way that we did that, we had this test where we quantify the amount of human genetic material in a sample, because with HIV, you want to figure out how many copies of the HIV genome do you have per number of human cells. So we had this assay that was able to do that. We realized that if we were having a problem with false negative results in COVID, it probably wasn't because of the actual lab test. The lab tests are really accurate. If COVID is there, we will find it. We thought to ourselves, actually, if we're having trouble with false negatives, it's probably because of something upstream. Collection of the sample might be done incorrectly. Transport of the sample might be done, right? There might be something with the quality of the sample. So how could we test this? We realized that we could use the amount of human biological material collected on the sample itself as a marker of sample quality, right? If you didn't collect the sample properly, you're not going to have enough material to do the test. So we rapidly applied the test that we had been using to quantify human biological material to SARS-CoV-2, and we were able to show that actually, if you look at tests that we strongly suspected to be false positive, there was hardly any biological material in them, indicating that the sample actually hadn't been collected properly. So we were able to rapidly do this and then to raise the alarm and saying, there's nothing wrong with the tests themselves, but we need to retrain healthcare workers to be able to collect these nasopharyngeal swabs better. And then so that's an example of just a really small example of how a scientist who has a technique to work on something can rapidly pivot to something else. But what I want to take this opportunity to do is answer the broader question, or I guess to just take this opportunity to state that science builds upon itself. And sometimes when it seems like we've rapidly pivoted to be able to do something new and to have great successes in that area, it's actually as a result, usually of decades of people working behind the scenes to incrementally advance our knowledge. And when an opportunity comes up to take what we know and pivot to something else, this is because we're building upon decades and decades of prior research. And the COVID-19 vaccines, mRNA vaccine technology is a great example of this, because I can understand that from the public's perspective, is like, what? We developed vaccines in half a year? Like, what? How is that even possible? How did we go from nothing to this? And it's like, well, actually, we've been researching, and the advantage in lipid nanoparticle delivery and in mRNA vaccine technologies date back to the late 70s, early 80s. It's just that this was going on behind the scenes, and COVID gave that opportunity to put it all together. And so mRNA vaccines are having their time in history right now. So yes, we can pivot, but only because there's a very, very, very solid knowledge base that allows us to do so.
Great answer. And I can certainly attest that Genome BC has been investing in that area for at least a decade, if not more. So it's just really given an opportunity to shine a light on all of this stuff that goes on in the background, because no one needs to know it at that particular point in time. But it's nice to be able to pull it out and point to it when we do need it. So that's my vote for research and investment. How do you counter misinformation and conspiracies without sounding disrespectful or condescending, and therefore losing the people who need the message or want the information? Lorraine, you want to give a go at that?
Ooh, boy. Well, if you're on Twitter, you've got two sentences. It's hard. And what you're countering often is a very, 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 very loud, tiny group. 60% of the anti-vax social media posts come from 12 sources. One of them, John F. Kennedy Jr.'s group, has a budget of has resources of $39 million US. Canada's just released a couple million to counter misinformation online. It's not easy. I tend to look at what really gets specific and see what it is. Sometimes I'll say, can you show me your sources? And they'll say, well, yeah, there's a radiologist saying the virus doesn't work that way. And I might suggest, well, let's talk to an immunologist, and here's some sources. It's not easy, but I try to see what's behind it. But yeah, it's easy to put my hand on my hip and say, what in God's green earth ever possessed you to think that? It's not easy, and it's hard. And with social media feeding more and more of what you like to anti-vaxxers or anti-science people or anti-maskers, it's compounded. And I think what we really need is more federal regulation. You can't shout fire in an empty theater or in a full theater, and you shouldn't be able to teach people that you don't have to look both ways before crossing the street. We also have to teach media that showing both sides, as we talked about earlier or heard this morning, showing both sides equally. When there's one person screaming, you don't have to look both ways before you cross the street, it's actually dangerous. And everybody else with common sense and science behind it, giving those both equal weight because you want controversy in a story. isn't responsible journalism.
Yeah, and I would add that, again, not trying as much as possible not to make judgments, to listen to what the person is saying and to try to figure out where you're getting your information from, and to respect the fact that not everyone has access to the information that they might need, and they might, because of whatever reasons, be turning to specific sources that might not be the most relevant sources, but those are the sources that are available to them. And so I've been in this situation multiple times. If I can draw upon an example from HIV, I've given a lot of lectures to different audiences about HIV, and I remember one particular time I had been speaking to clients of a particular treatment center, and after my talk, person raised their hand and, well, I actually heard that the Russians engineered HIV as a biological weapon and then unleashed it secretly upon, so HIV was engineered into a laboratory and was, engineered by scientists and released upon the populations who were most affected, in the United States in the early 1980s. So, can you address that? And then I think in that case, I was aware that there's conspiracy theories. And so I reacted by saying, that's interesting. I have heard that as well. But, let me try to explain to you very briefly the weight of evidence that we have that refutes that. And instead, let me walk you through the evidence that suggests very strongly that, HIV is a zoonosis, jumped the species barrier. And so I just used the opportunity to summarize as clearly as possible the science behind it, while acknowledging that I was aware that that perspective existed, but that it wasn't supported by the weight of scientific evidence. I'm not sure if I succeeded in convincing that person, but I did hear from others afterwards that said, you did a really good job of respecting that person's perspective and to give evidence that hopefully will help that person change their mind. If not, I appreciated your answer because, I've heard conspiracy theories too. And sometimes I think just giving people the space to say, I've heard this, but is there any way that you could maybe explain to me why it might not be correct? So just giving the space for people to ask questions and to have their concerns taken seriously. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, we are really short of time. I'm going to make the executive decision just to ask one more question, which actually just disappeared from my screen. But I think I can remember it enough. And that is hopefully short answers. Do you think that with this whole pandemic and the focus on science, that it may lay the path forward for more regular, deeper science, journalism, media, science literacy going forward?
Oh God, I hope so. There is a hunger for understanding, whether it's understanding how farmers work or scientists work. There's a hunger to understand and understand how it's going to affect me. And that's our job as journalists. We need more scientists becoming daily journalists. And sure, they're going to have to cover the bridge opening, but they may be able to tell you a bit about the engineering that went into it. So yeah, exactly. I think it has for sure, and we need more.
I agree too. I would say that I think the signals were there that we were already beginning to go on to be, moving forward on this path of greater science engagement and greater appreciation for evidence-based decision-making. I would say that COVID-19 and climate change are helping. Those are two great challenges, but one upshot is I think it's accelerating public engagement and interest in science. So I also hope that we will continue to move in that direction.
That's great. Well, I'm sorry that we have to wrap it up. We could go on for a lot longer. I want to thank you both very, very much for joining us. It has really been a pleasure, and I found the whole thing so incredibly interesting. And I want to thank the audience for some really terrific questions and for their engagement. We will take a break here at the Genomics Forum, and we will reconvene back here at 4 o'clock for our Ask Me Anything panel. And to view that session, you just go back to the event hub and click on View Session, and you will find the next group. So that's at 4 o'clock. See you then. Thanks very much, everybody.